But we begin this hour with some breaking news. Authorities are charging Alec Baldwin and a weapons specialist with involuntary manslaughter following the fatal shooting of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins.
Now, Hutchins died shortly after being wounded by a gunshot during a rehearsal on the set of that unfinished film called Rust. This was back in 2021. Baldwin was pointing a pistol at Hutchins when the gun went off. Now, the actor and film producer has described her killing as, quote, a tragic accident. He also sued people involved in handling the gun that was given to him. Baldwin's lawyers have vowed to fight these criminal charges.
Well, joining us now is CBS News correspondent Kris Cleave and CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson. Kris, I'm going to start with you. You've been covering this story. How surprising is it that Baldwin was charged?
Well, it certainly sends a message from the DA and the special prosecutor here that they are taking this as a crime, that they view what happened on that movie set as a crime, a felony crime. So it is a very strong message, certainly not the one that Alec Baldwin and the armorer Gutierrez Reed were hoping for here, but a very strong message being sent nonetheless. In fact, the special prosecutor said if any of the three people that have been cited in this case, the assistant director Halls is also pleading guilty here. If any of those three had done their job, the statement read, that Hutchins, the cinematographer, would still be alive.
And we're just seeing footage right now from that fateful day back in 2021 from the set there in New Mexico. Jessica, this did take place more than a year ago, and there is the issue of Baldwin having his own kind of case against others involved. So why are these charges being announced now, and how do all of these things perhaps play together or not?
Great question. So what we know about the timing of the charges is that basically there was a years-long investigation, and we still have a lot of open questions. We still don't know, as far as the reporting indicates, how that live ammunition got in the gun that was handed to Alec Baldwin, and he was told cold gun. We don't know exactly the series of events that led up to that moment. What we do know, I think, is that the prosecutor did not find intent. And that's why you see these involuntary manslaughter charges, is that nobody thinks there was an intent to kill Hutchins. Now, when it comes to the timing, again, I think that years-long investigation had to be completed. With respect to the other cases, those are civil cases, and there have been suits and countersuits, suits against Alec Baldwin. He's also filed a countersuit, a counterclaim, where he specifically said, that's to clear my name. You know, how does that involve the criminal cases? Well, the prosecutor has said it will have no bearing whatsoever, that she is just proceeding based on the facts and the law as she sees them, unrelated to those settlements and the civil cases.
So it sounds like, Jessica, given that Baldwin settled with the Hutchins family, that has no impact at all on the criminal case. If they said that they forgive him, that they don't hold him responsible, might the prosecutor take that into account?
It doesn't look like this prosecutor is taking that into account. And frankly, whether or not the family is satisfied with a civil outcome or not satisfied with a civil outcome, which obviously deals with just monetary damages, arguably shouldn't have any bearing on whether or not criminal charges are appropriate in this case. Criminal charges are appropriate when somebody has engaged in criminal conduct and you believe that you can prove that beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury. Frankly, I think in some ways, regardless of how the family may feel.
And Kris, this news just breaking, a very short time ago. Have either Baldwin or members of Hutchins' family responded yet to these upcoming charges? And looking ahead, I'm wondering how all of this might impact the nature of filmmaking, considering this was a low-budget movie and, deaths that occurred as a result of apparent negligence.
Well, yeah. So lawyers for Alec Baldwin have responded to CBS News, saying in part, this decision distorts Halyna Hutchins' tragic death and represents a terrible miscarriage of justice. We will fight these charges and we will win. Now, what's interesting here is that the Hutchins family did reach that settlement. they have put out a statement today as well, which, let me get it up here so I quote them correctly, but it is interesting because they say they support the criminal charges that were filed today. In fact, their statement says, I'm going to just read it to you here, we thank the Santa Fe Sheriff and District Attorney for concluding their thorough investigation and determining that charges for involuntary manslaughter are warranted. Our independent investigation supports charges are warranted. It is a comfort to the family that in New Mexico, no one is above the law. We support the charges, will fully cooperate with this prosecution, and fervently hope the justice system works to protect the public and hold accountable those who break the law. That was from the lawyers representing the Hutchins family. As for the future of filmmaking, I mean, there were clear safety violations, deviations from, what would be standard practices on a movie set. The fact that there were several live rounds found mixed in with the dummy rounds is a safety issue that, in theory, shouldn't occur on a set. The criminal charges here are clearly aimed at not only trying to prosecute a crime, but this will send a message that certainly Hollywood's going to pay attention to.
And Kris, just on that last note, that there were live rounds mixed in there, are investigators any closer to understanding how that happened?
Not a clear answer on why those rounds were there. Also not, a clear answer as to how that live round got into the gun. Remember, you had a contractor and employee, Seth Kenny, who was the primary supplier of the guns and the ammo to this set. Then you have Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, who's been charged along with Alec Baldwin for involuntary manslaughter. She was the armorer. She was responsible for the weapons on the set that day. She apparently gave the gun to Dave Halls, the assistant director, who has pled guilty in a plea agreement to negligence. He inspected the gun before it got into Baldwin's hands. So, there were multiple places here where this live round could have been detected. Unclear how it got into the gun in the first place. Clearly shouldn't have been on the set at all. So that's one of the unanswered questions, at least as far as we know. Now, it's possible some of that will become clearer as evidence in the criminal case is released as this moves forward. But for now, the next steps will be the charges being formally filed sometime before the end of the month. And then there will be a summons process. The DA in media reports is saying that there won't be like a mugshot or a perp walk. So, you're not going to necessarily see Alec Baldwin or the armorer Gutierrez-Reed coming into the courthouse here with police to formally surrender per se, but there will be a summons process, there'll be a first appearance, and then a preliminary hearing to determine what, if any, charges actually can move on to trial.
All right. Kris Van Cleave.
Many steps yet to go.
Yes, and still some unanswered questions. Kris Van Cleave, Jessica Levinson, thank you both.